Wind gusts have increased from 185 to 190 miles per hour. The movement going from west at 14 miles per hour, slowing a bit down to 12. This can often happen when you're interacting with land, as we see with the Bahamas as well as Cuba. But the thing to note, it's in its prime spot. It's in open water here. This is a necessary ingredient for a lot of these hurricanes to be able to either maintain strength or actually intensify. And that's what we expect it to do. Intensify up to a Category 5 storm just before it crosses over the Florida Keys. Then as it goes into the Florida Panhandle in the main peninsula region, it will likely make landfall as a Category 4. But over the Florida Keys, if it ends up making landfall there as a Category 5, it would be only the fourth Category 5 storm to ever hit the United States in modern times. So again, just to show you how rare of a thing this would actually be. We talk about some of the big concerns, obviously being winds, but storm surge is going to be another huge impact here. From West Palm Beach stretching down towards Key West, we are looking at storm surge of around 5 to 10 feet. North of that, up towards Cape Canaveral, we could be looking at 3 to 6 feet. On the southwestern side, Naples down to Key West, this is where we could actually see some of the highest storm surge of 8 to 12 feet. It's called shoaling, okay? The reason it has to do with is the depth there. On the eastern side of Florida, it's a pretty steep dip once you get in towards the ocean from where the beach is. On the western side, it's much more gradual when the water starts to dip off. Because of that, it allows that water to be able to come up higher as it moves inland. So you're naturally going to have slightly higher storm surge in that southwestern portion of Florida. We also talk about the expansion of hurricane watches and hurricane warnings now that we are getting closer to landfall. And these are likely to spread even farther north over the next 24 hours. So just because your county may not be under a hurricane watch or warning right now doesn't mean it will stay that way. We will likely see more counties added to this in the next 24 hours. Here's a look at the forecast intensity because you have to understand the size of this storm. It is massive, and because of that, the hurricane force winds will actually extend on both sides. So it doesn't really matter if you're on the Miami side or the Naples side. You are going to get hurricane force winds out of this storm. It's not likely to weaken below that until it gets close enough to the Georgia state line. Now, a lot of comparisons have been made to Andrew. One of the big differences is that size. This is to scale. This is Andrew. This is Irma. You can see the sheer difference between the two of them in not just size, but also strength. And yes, well, if we talked about the models, for the last couple of days, they've been a little off. You have to kind of pick and choose. Now you don't have to, because both of the models, especially the main ones that we look at, have really come into agreement on where this is going to make landfall and when. And at this point, that when looks to be early Sunday morning for South Florida.
The American model and the European model now in agreement. All right, Allison, stand by. I know you're working.
Irma, as this storm continues to shift west, let's begin with our first and four coverage with Storm Team 8 meteorologist Julie Phillips.
Thank you, Josh. And unfortunately, that has been the trend over the last 2 days, has been that westward shift in the tracks. We're closely monitoring that for you. As of the last advisory at 2 p.m., we do have maximum winds at 155 miles per hour, so it has strengthened a bit, but it's still a Category 4 storm. Moving to the west at 14 miles per hour, you can still see a pretty well-defined eye that's right now staying north of Cuba. If this were to move closer or over Cuba, we could actually again see some weakening, but at this point that eye is staying off to the north, and it's continuing on that northwestward track. You can see Saturday at 8 p.m., that's when we may start to see the turn to the north, and in general, the trend has been a little bit farther to the west. You can see a potential landfall in south or maybe even southwest Florida as we head into early Sunday morning as a Category 4 storm, and then it looks pretty much like more likely looking like it's going to move up through the center of the state or even a little bit farther west and then slowly weakening as it does move north. But at least it's moving quickly. Monday at 8 a.m. it's moving north of our viewing area and it's about a Category 1 storm, and then we'll continue off to the north and west there. beginning model-wise, you can see a few outliers, but a large portion of these bringing the storm into southwest Florida and moving it up towards the center or west center of the state before it moves out into the southeast, where we really don't care as much about it anymore. As far as watches go, you can see hurricane watches posted for much of the Tampa Bay area, including Hillsborough, Pinellas, Polk, Highlands, Manatee, Sarasota, Hardee, and DeSoto counties. We may see those updated to a hurricane warning as this gets closer. We'll have more on Irma coming up in a few minutes. Guys.
He's getting more information. Allison, hurricane warnings, now they've been extended farther north on both coasts of Florida.
And Wolf, that's likely going to continue as we get closer and closer to that landfall. More and more counties are going to be added to that list. So if you think to yourself, my county's not under a watch or a warning yet, that may change. Don't plan your evacuation plans based off of that, because as we get closer to landfall, more of those counties will be added. One of the big differences we noticed in the latest advisory was the shift. It takes the track a further west about 12 miles. That may not seem like that much, but that could end up being the difference between a landfall over Miami or a landfall over a place like Key Largo. So every little bit of a shift counts at this point. Now, winds right now 155 miles per hour. Winds have increased up to 190 miles per hour, and the forward movement west at about 12 miles per hour. It's going to be entering incredibly warm water over the next 24 hours. That is going to allow this storm to intensify back up to a Category 5 storm. We expect the winds very early Sunday. We're talking, say, around midnight to 4 a.m. to be around the 160 mile per hour range, 157 by the way.